have a picture of a bakery product that I baked at home that you can see it on your screens, and I want number of likes on it. What should be my caption or what should be my hashtags for it? Starting with the food trends that are being followed currently in the market. I will start with gluten-free baking. Anyone else have any ideas? You might get a gift card to answer. Any hashtag for bakery product or food material? Okay. Anything else? Home baking. Okay. Anything else? Hashtag delicious. But something that is related to the food trends that are in the market. Okay. So if we talk about healthy, we know that we need different ingredients in our product, and one of the ingredient that is famous and it is very desirable by the consumer is protein. But if I have to have a caption for this picture, I would have, and this is my objective here is to get more and more likes. So my hashtag would be plant-based, because we are so much into plant-based diet these days. So this is something that would be one of my hashtags. Next is sustainability, because we also consider the health of our environment, our earth. We want to protect our planet, so we look into products which are more sustainable, or we also want products which are locally produced within our community or within our country. So locally produced ingredients would be one of the famous hashtags that would get me more likes on this picture. Protein packed, high protein diet, so healthy, yes, and that is related to protein packed. Next up is climate friendly. It again comes to the sustainability. Then vegan, food innovation, and dairy free. So these hashtags would get me more and more likes on a picture that of a bakery product that I baked at home. But not everybody likes baking, and not everybody enjoys making food at home. We always strive for something convenient, and that convenience in terms of food gets us to the grocery stores. Now, if I have to get a gluten-free product, I would go to a grocery store and I would go to the gluten-free product aisle, and I will be greeted by the first product, which is gluten-free white sandwich bread. Now, this is a normal bread that you have it in your breakfast or lunch or dinner, but this is a gluten-free product. So, as a food researcher, I would always go and look at the ingredients that are present in that product, because we want to know what goes into our food and what we are eating. So here you see that the number of products that we have here are a lot, and mostly the products that or the ingredients that are present in this kind of product are starches, different gums, different emulsifiers, and different modified cellulose products. Again, these ingredients are food grade for sure, but what are its purpose in terms of nutrition? Next up, we have another. As we move forward in the grocery aisle, we are greeted by the desserts. So my favorite brownie, again, as a food researcher, I would want to know what goes into my food, and the ingredients that I have in a gluten-free brownie are potato starch, tapioca starch, different gums, different emulsifiers, different uh, a number of products that may or may not be required in a home baking. So the conclusion of these two slides is that yes, we have number of products and there is no harm in having these food grade ingredients in that product, but what about the nutrition that we get from them? If I talk about the sandwich bread that we have got in the grocery store, of course it's an amazing product. It's gluten free. It doesn't have a wheat protein. But what is the calorie count that you get from it? It is 180 calories per two servings, per two slices of bread, and out of those calories, all of them you are getting from carbohydrates. They are energy providing food groups. You don't get as much as amount of protein. So that means these food products are not following the trends or the desirability of the consumer. And the protein that you see in this bread is just 1 gram. You eat 2 slices of bread and you get just 1 gram of protein. And when it comes to the brownie, you eat one brownie, you get 350 calories, but all those calories, or most of those calories, come again from a carbohydrate source. That means there is more and more sugars. And that again leads to the future of health impacts. But we want to create a better future for our food, so we need better ingredients for making better bakery products. And that's where, as a food researcher, I want to figure out what's the solution for it. In my case, because I study pulses or dry beans, I think dry beans make a really good candidate for having gluten-free products. Now, why I say that, number one, is Canada is one of the leading producers of dry beans. In fact, it exports 80% of all the dry beans that it produces in the country to the outer world, and only 20% of it is consumed within Canada. That means we are still not following the food trend of locally produced. We are not utilizing what is already available in the country itself. And dry beans, they have starches, they got a lot of protein, they got dietary fiber, they got vitamins, they got minerals, and that means they are a healthy ingredient, a healthy replacement for our wheat flour in a bakery product. And that means they are good for our health. Another benefit of using dry beans is that they help fix atmospheric nitrogen in the soil. They maintain nitrogen cycles in the environment naturally, and hence they helps to foster the sustainability in the environment and help in maintaining in tackling the climate change that has an adverse effect on all of us at this point. So that means dried beans can be considered as a good candidate to enter into the market, so that we can make more gluten-free products with that. But as I mentioned, that in Canada, people don't eat dry beans a lot. Only 20% of what is being produced is used within the country. So the reasons for that is they are very difficult to cook. Of course, as I mentioned, we strive for convenience. That's why we buy grocery store bakery products. But if dry beans are inconvenient to cook, why would one go and buy it and make products out of it? Next up, they have very characteristic beany and grassy flavor that is not likable by many of us. And also, they have some anti-nutritional factors that can cause gastrointestinal discomfort. Another thing is that they have, in Canada, we have very limited product variety or products that are made with dry beans. In Canada, currently, the dry beans that are sold at grocery stores are in the form of whole seeds, or you get soups, bean soups, or you get them as baked beans. So that means you don't have enough product variety with which people would be, would like to eat more and more beans. That's why we need to figure out solutions for these problems. Now, because I mentioned dry beans are high in protein, they could be used as meat or dairy alternatives, or they could be used in alternate bakery-based ingredient. So far, all that talking about baking, you must have already understood that in my research, I look at the dry beans used as a bakery-based ingredient as a wheat alternative. Okay, so as I mentioned that beans difficult to cook, low product variety. So how can we tackle this issue? We can simply grind the beans into flour and make products with the flour and increase the product variety. But so to understand a little bit about that, we see over here there is whole bean. You mill it and make flour out of it. If you look at the microscopic images of these whole seeds, you would see that there are starches which are surrounded by the protein bodies. When you mill it into a flour, it looks something like a picture on your left, or on your right actually, a picture on your right, and you see that there are starches, and then there are broken pieces of those cotyledon cells, and then there are broken pieces of those protein bodies. Now, okay, we got flour out of beans. Let's make a product. Let's bake a product out of it. So I decide to bake a cake product, but because I'm making it a wheat flour substitute, I need to compare it with my wheat flour. So I made two cakes, and the results showed that the bean flour cake was low in volume, it was dense, and it was less. It had less air cells, and it had nothing in comparison to what a wheat flour cake would look like. So, if given a choice to you, what cake would you like to taste? Would it be the A or would it be the B? A, A, right? So even after making and flour out of a bean, we are not satisfied with the product that we get, because we eat the product with our eyes first. So now the solution we needed to find out was how to make a better bean-based cake or any bakery product. What we did, we processed the flour. Now when we talk processing, when we say processing, we always get scared that, okay, processing would lead to this or it's not good. But in my research, um, okay, we use physical treatments for processing. But before I dive deep into those characteristics of uh, flour, let me talk a little bit about why my wheat flour cake look different from my bean flour cake. So here you see that in a wheat kernel, that is on your left, I suppose, on your right. So that is on your right, and then there is bean seed that is on your left. You see that the makeup of these two seeds is entirely different from one another. You have a lot more starch in wheat flour as compared to your bean flour, and you have almost half the protein in wheat flour as compared to your bean flour. And at this point, we didn't get a cake that we would have desired, because we are trying to make a product out of something that is entirely different in the makeup of our expected or our comparative substitute. So that's why we need to process these flours so that we could achieve a product like a wheat flour cake. So I process, in my research, my main objective is to process this flour, but with processing, don't get scared, because I don't use any chemicals to process my flours. There is no chemical involved, and I use any technique that you use in your normal kitchen. You cook your food, that means you heat it up to a high temperature. I heat the flours at a higher temperature. You cook beans in a pressure cooker. I process beans using pressure, but not in a pressure cooker, but in a huge machine that I will show you in the upcoming slides. But the thing is, my objective with this research is, now imagine that you are in a flour system, right? You are looking at the starches and you're looking at the proteins. You will see the starch granules, which are blue circles. They are very closely embedded in a protein matrix. Now, if you have to create a batter out of it, a cake batter or a dough out of it, this protein does not let water enter to the starch and develop a consistency of a nice batter or a dough. So with processing with higher temperature and pressure, we tend to open up this protein matrix around starches so that my water can get into these circles, and these starches could get hydrates well and make a nice consistency in a batter for a cake or a dough for a bread. So what I do in my research is, first of all, I mill these whole seeds into flour using a mill, and then these flours are processed using heat treatment. I treat these flours at high temperatures ranging from 120 to 190 degrees Celsius. And then I also um, process these flowers in a machine that you see over here. It's called high pressure processing machine. So your flower slurry is packed in a plastic bag. It is vacuum sealed, and you put it in this machine and you apply an extensive pressure on it. So much so that that pressure tends to change your starches, your proteins, which are molecular level polymers. So after that, after these flowers are processed, we need to test them. We need to test them the for the change in the starch, because we need to prove. In research, we prove things, we show evidence. So I need to show that yes, if I've applied temperature, if I've applied pressure, my starch would change, my proteins in the flour would change, and that would change my flour's function or performance in a cake product. So after that, I would utilize this flour to bake a cake. Now, when I do that, I have to show a proof of yes, my temperature and my pressure is changing my starches. These are the microscopic images. You might have used a microscope in your science lab. It's the very basic optical microscope that uses sheds light on the sample, and you see an image which is magnified to certain 4x or 10x value. So you see that in my unprocessed flour, which had undergone no processing, is not different from my dry heat treated flour. So my unprocessed starches and my processed starches with dry heat treatment, they don't change at all. But when it comes to high pressure, you see a change in the starches structure, that you see different fissures, different cracks on the surface of your starch granules. So that means pressure changes starch, heat does not change starch. And then to better understand or get even better pictures, I used further a cooler machine that we have at our university, which is called scanning electron microscope. It is more advanced microscope where we don't use the light to see the sample. Instead, we bombard it with electrons, and you get an image out of it, and you can see starches more clearly. And here you see that my starches do not change with the heat treatment, but they change it with the pressure treatment. And you see that now the circular starches, they change into a donut shape. So again, I have proved that my heat treatment changes my starches, but my pressure does not. Next up is a little very sciencey experiment where we use the infrared range of light to see the change in my protein structures. Proteins are one of the food groups that have specific makeup. They start by being a linear structure, then they fold in certain ways, and those folds are named as alpha helices, beta sheets, beta turns. Now, with my experiment, you see changes in these bar graphs. They show that different treatments, the heat treatments, the pressure treatments, they change the structure of my protein. Somewhere the beta sheets are more, somewhere the alpha helices are more. And then we also looked at the performance of my flour. Now, the thing to note over here is that I did not make a product to test if my flour was working. I did basic science experiments to predict if my flour would work for my cake product or not. So this is one of the experiments to predict that, okay, if I have this flour, I have processed it with heat treatment or a pressure treatment, will I get a good cake structure out of it or not? So this experiment basically tells you the consistency of the flour when you add water into it. So we have in this experiment, in this equipment, what we use is we have a small container. We add flour, we add water into it, and uh, we continuously stir the mixture and heat it to a temperature of 95 degrees Celsius. Now, why 95 degrees Celsius? If you ever baked a cake at home, how do you test if it is baked perfectly? Okay, I'll give you the gift card for that. That's the right answer. But another way of testing that is if you add a thermometer in it, a special baking thermometer that usually professionals use it, you would see the temperature at the core of the cake is 95 degrees Celsius. So I'm mimicking that product in this experiment where I heat my flour and water at 95 degrees Celsius. And if the consistency increase, that means this product or this flour is going to work for my cake product. And now you see that if we come back to the slide where I showed what my research objective was to open up that protein network around starches. So when I increase the temperature, I see that that starch or that protein network around starches is opening up, and it opens up so much so at very high temperature that the starches now absorb more water and the consistency is increased, as you can see in the graph where you see a higher peak viscosity or higher intensity. And this was my experiment with my heat treated flours or flours that I heated at very high temperatures. Next up, I have an experiment where I checked if my pressure treated flours would work or not. So what I did, again, I took a small container, added flour into it, added water into it, and heated it to 95 degrees Celsius and tested the consistency of it. And I saw that with increase in that pressure, my consistency was decreasing till 450 megapascal. So just imagine something, a coil or something. If you're putting so much pressure on it, you are making it more and more compact. That means the water that you add into the batter, it is not reaching to your starch granules, and that's why your system does not swell and the consistency does not increase. But at a pressure of 500 megapascal, it is too high that at this point it just breaks apart. And because the protein network opens completely, the starch granules now get to have more water, swell, and increase in the consistency, as could be seen for one of the samples that we have over here. But when you start increasing pressure way more than the 500 megapascal, you see that that pressure not only affects your protein structure, but it also starts to damage your starches, as we saw in the microscopic images. So we are proving things what we thought would be happening in the flower system, and that's make food science really cool, that you are actually able to see what's happening in your system at a molecular level. So here I would predict that my 500 megapascal flour should work for my cake structure. Now I did some science experiments which might be boring to the audience, so I need to show it in a product so that you are able to say, yes, what you said is true and it works. So I made cakes out of the flours that I processed, and I saw that the flour that was processed with high temperature made a cake that looked like a wheat flour cake, and that was what we were aiming at. We wanted a cake product that looked like a wheat flour cake. But even though the pressure treated flour showed me the higher viscosity, it did not give me the cake that I was expecting. So we needed to figure out why this happened. So what we did was we looked at the viscosity change in the presence of something that we add in the cakes. So what is another major ingredient that you add in cakes? The major ingredient, apart from flour. And you said sugar? Yes. So we wanted to test the viscosity or the consistency. So we wanted to test the consistency of my cake flour using high pressure treatment in the presence of sugar. And I saw that it does not show consistency in the presence of sugar. That means this flour is not going to work for cake products. But do we add a lot more sugar in bread? No. So that means we are able to predict with the technology that we are using which treatment or which processing would work for producing which kind of flour. In market, currently we have wheat flours that are all purpose. You can use it for any product. Then there is cake flour, and then there is special bread flour, and then there is different cookie flour. So with this processing that we have, we are able to prepare gluten-free products which are specific to which could be specifically used in different products. And in this way, we are able to create better products, gluten-free products which are nutritious and follow all food trends.